GM Growth Fam, time for another episode. Today I have Marko from Oasis Protocol, who's the head of AI over there, who's been doing the rounds at a lot of international conferences, talking the gospel of decentralized AI. Personally, a subject that I'm very passionate about, and almost like I have him on for almost selfish reasons. But I think there are a lot of questions that people have, and some of really fascinating ones that I want to get into. So, Marko, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So, Marco, I know you call yourself a recovering venture capitalist who's now almost ventured into the world of AI and decentralized compute. What I wanted to understand is what was like a pivotal moment in your journey? Like, obviously, everybody has that one moment where you feel like, okay, now my path in life changed completely. What was that one pivotal part of your journey that led you to where you are today?
Maybe cliche for lots of people in crypto, but it was honestly reading the Bitcoin white paper. I remember it very vividly. It was like mid 2017. I've heard about it before. I even did like a course at university where we did like crypto regulation, but it never clicked like what it actually is. And I was like, it can't be that complicated. Let me just read the white paper. And honestly, it's not. Like, I still don't understand when some people have not read it. Like, come on, it's not a lot of pages. It's pretty basic, but it just clicked for me that this is how the world should be. It should be code controlled. It should be deterministic as much as possible. We don't need these middlemen in between telling us what we can do, what we can't do, and even taking their cut out of it. So for me, this was like, damn, I really want to work on this. So I actually skipped all the internships that I had planned for my gap year. This was like right between bachelor and master for me. And I moved back to my parents and I just locked myself in their basement and had the most productive time I've ever had. Like I started coding, I started planning my whole day, reading all kinds of white papers. Then obviously 2018 came, most of the stuff crashed. The excitement kind of went away and I was not a developer, so I didn't really have a chance to get into the industry. I just knew the big projects. I had no connection even to the startup world. Like I can't work for Chainlink, can I? Like I don't even know where they're based out of. I had no concept of remote work. Like, okay, I do gotta start university. But actually, first day of university, I did learn that there was a blockchain association. So I went straight to the president. I was like, I want to work with you guys. We had this kind of mini interview, and I was like, what do you guys want to do in crypto? Then after university, they were like, we don't want to work in crypto. Like there really was no concept of doing much in crypto if you're not a developer. But I was like really adamant, like I really, really want to do this stuff. But it did, as you say, take me a while. I did start first with venture capital.
And what was like the most, let's say, uncanny investment that you made that you look back at as a VC?
Uncanny in what sense?
Let's say, I think, especially as a VC, you almost have like a bet that you make that maybe your team is not in alignment with, but you sell it to them
Mm.
and everybody gets aligned on that. What was that one for you?
I think it was actually a transcription tool. So at the time, like there was already Auto AI, there were already kind of these tools that jump into your meetings and transcribe everything. But this project specifically, they had a very strong value proposition because they had access to lots of legal data via the Austrian government. So we were like, man, they could train a really sophisticated model on German, Austrian, maybe even Swiss. Then it could be a very attractive acquisition target for someone like Otto. But then rather quickly, ChatGPT came and transcription became a non-thing. It was like super easy to do. And yes, of course, you do need to refine the UX, but the actual model, there was no chance they could catch up. So I think they are still around. I don't want to say the name. I still really respect the founders, but it in retrospect was not a good investment.
Isn't it interesting that the pace at which things I feel we've gotten accustomed to in crypto is like something can happen every week, every day, and we've almost grown numb to the pace of things is now playing out in the AI world and with the Web2 people where they're like, okay, I'm building X product, I'm spending 6 months on it, and then boom, there's a new update to GPT and now my company is irrelevant. Do you think like because you're at the inflection point between AI and crypto, so I'm asking you that question. When you do have conversations with founders on both sides, how do you feel like people are recovering from the pace at which things are moving? Is that exciting for them? Is that daunting for them? What's it like?
I think it's both. Like some are really excited because they get bored quickly anyway, so they just want to work on new things, kind of try out new frameworks. But honestly, from a perspective of some that really want to build companies that want to have an impact, it's really daunting because you can't make your whole value proposition just this API to an LLM provider. You can't even make your value proposition to any of the new tools that come out, like the Swarm SDK or Agent SDK from OpenAI, because then suddenly you have A2A from Google. A couple of weeks or even a month before, you had MCP server suddenly being the hype. So someone's like, oh, damn, I'm going to build an MCP server. I know really well this tool. I'm going to provide all these agents access to this tooling. And then suddenly MCPs are not that hot anymore. So it's the pace at which it's moving, as you said, it's incredible. And I think it makes it very difficult to build companies because you have to be pivoting nonstop.
Yeah, I have a laugh about it with my some of my friends that work in consulting because they get scared almost every day.
They should be like honestly, as most people fresh out of university, doesn't matter, bachelor, master, undergrad, graduate. Most of the jobs are kind of these basic things. You normally do lots of analyst stuff, like I did. My first job was venture capital investment analyst. This is pretty much deep research. Click, and then I
No,
had to present
100%.
it, create the slides for it. But this is now a commodity for everyone. It's incredible.
So we understand that there is an inflection point between AI and blockchain, right? Almost feel like this is going to be a symbiotic relationship between the two technologies. And I don't feel like it's a new concept that people are just getting aware of it. But I think, especially the pace at which things are happening, people are almost growing, okay, I'm giving basically all my life. I'm seeking life advice, work advice, just daily living advice from Chat GPT at this point, and the amount of personal data that the GPT has access to now and can keep as context with itself. I mean, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's really scary, right? Because now, before it just used to be like, okay, I'm scrolling TikTok, and based on what I like and engage with, they can sort of figure out what I like or what I dislike. But now it's almost like I'm pouring my heart out into GPT, and now it's going to basically have like a almost like a profile on my head that I can use for God knows what reason. What I did want to understand is when you are talking about all of this to different users, right? Of course, focus on privacy because I feel like that was a narrative people cared about, but not as much to completely pivot over. Do you feel like that's changing now, or do you feel like users are going to care enough about this problem going forward?
I think we're full circle where people don't care yet. I mean, I'm sure you remember when suddenly big news came out, big tech is manipulating us based on the data that we are kind of providing them on a silver platter for a free product. And suddenly the narrative came out and people started to realize, hey, I'm the product. I'm being manipulated based on my behavioral pattern data. But then, of course, there was this hatred towards big tech. People try to kind of find alternatives. I try to avoid Google as much as possible. Now I'm back in Google Suite. Obviously, most people try to avoid then Facebook Meta. Now Meta is actually again the good guy with open sourcing their models because they don't have a clear business model on how to profit from LLMs. But now with AI, we're back. Suddenly the value proposition is so clear. It's so amazing to use these models. So I don't care about privacy. Like I'm not in a position to care about privacy because I really need to use these tools. But of course, there are methods to still protect your privacy. I actually held the keynote on this last weekend in Amsterdam, where I specifically tried to get people to understand, like, what is your price for privacy? Is it really just that there is a Ghibli-fied image of you now? Is that really worth it to give up personal pictures to this company where you have no idea how they are protecting these images, all of the data? And what I try to do is I unfortunately try to get people scared. But one way is just like try to think about an OpenAI hack. And there is a data leak. All of the prompts that you have done so far with your email address. I don't know. Hopefully, most use a non-doxing email address, but some have first name dot last name at something. Imagine this is open for everyone to see. Like I said it also there on stage. Like I am quite sure my girlfriend, who's in the next room, would break up with me. Seeing how I talk about her or ask ChatGPT for relationship advice, where I don't know, I'm not sure if I could speak this openly with another human, but it's incredible. Like this is very personal thoughts, ideas, feelings that we are sharing with this company just because there is an interface in between that feels intelligent. And I don't have this awareness that this is a massive data honeypot just being filled to the brim and being ripe for exploitation. And who knows what's going to happen.
No, 100%. Couldn't agree more. And I also feel like, especially because you're almost at the, you're at the middle road of tech and sort of like the practical applications of it. How do you see sort of the relationship between human expertise and AI agents evolving? Because like that's probably the next step out of, okay, you can talk to the GPT now that GPT can do a million things for you. And what I want to understand this from a lens of basically jobs, right? People who are in creative roles, strategic roles that are eventually going to be using these AI agents almost on a daily basis. How do you feel like this relationship between human expertise and AI agents is going to evolve? And then what are certain things that people should be concerned about, should be keeping in their head?
I mean, I hinted at it before. I'm definitely more on the doomer side of things. Like, I think there are massive risks. I don't think our society or any society is ready for a world where AI can do most of the jobs. Currently, it can't. Don't get me wrong. But I think as it's currently developing with the speed of improvement, it sometimes feels like, oh, we're finally reaching a plateau. There is always this next evolution. It is getting quite concerning. Like, I do not know what fresh students will do as a first job. Most of those things are things that LLMs or kind of AI agents can now do. I think the human expertise currently still is incredibly important. Generally, you need them at the beginning and at the end, but lots of the bulk of the work can be automated. Currently, that's pretty much what AI agents are. They are automation tools. That's why I am quite excited about them also in the crypto world, because there's so much that can be automated and hopefully will be, because it can just improve the UX of the whole crypto world. It will hopefully help also kind of onboard new users who are most of the time kind of pushed away by the horrible UX that we have in our industry. But yeah, the role of humans is changing. There are a few ways on the way we can compete. I really enjoy listening to Trent McConaughey, the founder of Ocean Protocol. He's also one of our advisors. He's, for example, very bullish on this idea of BCI, so brain computer interfaces, how to accelerate them, stuff like Neuralink. Because then suddenly humans are very much connected to the intelligence of LLMs or AI models in general. And there is a way for us to play a role in the future of human work.
It's and I was reading a article about this. I don't know, there was some news that came out about Neuralink or brain implants specifically, but then that opens a whole different can of
Yeah,
worms of its own when it comes to privacy. But I think probably an interesting question to ask you would be that, so we saw what happened with Cambridge Analytica, Meta, and all of the different sort of things that happened when it within that realm with the data leaks and so on and so forth. But that didn't change anything, right? Like people still use, like they use Instagram, they use WhatsApp, they use all of these applications, and they're very well aware of that their data is being shared. Do you feel like, is it that we are valuing, and I think it's a constant debate, right? Especially within data privacies, people value convenience over being private and or being decentralized or not giving the power over to centralized organizations. How do you feel like that might change? Like, okay, one part of that is, okay, you're aware of that, but do we need to make privacy so convenient that it's almost like second nature to people? Or do you feel like there needs to be an even bigger event, something like a data leak in ChatGPT, for people to open their eyes and then look towards more privacy focused applications?
I think it's both. First, for those interested in this kind of worms, the keyword you're looking for is cognitive liberty. Try to kind of figure out or read up on this to see, yes, privacy will be incredibly important once we get into this kind of whole Neuralink brain computer interfaces world. And yes, on one hand, a data leak, some big news events showing all of your data on a silver platter will open up the eyes of people. But until then, what I mentioned before, there is a price for your privacy. Everyone will pay it. I do too. I do use ChatGPT. I try to obfuscate this as much as possible. I hope Sam Altman is not listening into this. I mean, I do hope it for you, but for my sake, no, because I am sharing my ChatGPT account on purpose with other people. So at least the cross memory part is a bit confused when there's now questions about nail polish and the other one is about ZK or something. I just kind of not have a very clear picture about myself. Then of course you should be using multiple tools. There are definitely ways you can kind of preserve your privacy. But as you said, until privacy becomes the default, there will be a price. And that's why I'm saying, like, is it worth it for you to have a fun Ghibli-fied image? For me, it's not. So that's part I won't do, but most people will do until we get to this default stage where there is no more price to pay for using a private GPT. Like it has the same inference speed, it has the same quality, it has the same memory. Then we will finally kind of take this as the default and never accept something that doesn't have privacy. But that's quite the road ahead. And if you want, I can kind of elaborate on the two ways that I see going forward with this.
Please.
On one hand, it is confidential compute. So you can get cryptographic attestations that guarantee your privacy and that verify the integrity of the compute. This is, for example, achievable via trusted execution environments, TEEs, which is one of the privacy tags very much being developed in the crypto world. And this is nothing like in the out of the extraordinary. I mean, NVIDIA has had confidential compute as an option for their H100s, H200s for like, they released it first like 2 years ago, but since like a year, you can properly use it. So it's just a matter of like, you have to enable confidential compute. But for a centralized company, why should they do it? They're really benefiting from knowing what you're inputting, what the output is, etc. But there is a way, and I'm sure there will be projects utilizing this. There's quite a few SDKs coming out for this. We are definitely also working towards this future. The second option is we need better consumer grade hardware that actually allows you to run these LLMs at your own home. I'm not speaking about like buying 5 Mac minis and you have your server room at home. Come on, that's not feasible. The UX again is not great. It's actually also quite expensive. But if we get something like the Jetson from NVIDIA, but that's actually quite portable and connectable with just your MacBook Air. And you can just kind of have it as your own personal AI computer. I would use it really tomorrow for price, I don't know, 1K, 2K. It would need to be depend, but again, there's a price for privacy, but this one would be very worth to pay because then you can run most of the stuff locally and you don't have to worry about privacy.
That's really useful tips. Okay, let's take a step back. I want to understand from your perspective, obviously, because it's a conversation that's happening quite a bit now, especially, which is the fact that UI UX is going to completely change in the new future of AI, where ChatGPT becomes the operating system for pretty much everything. How do you feel like are we going to get completely rid of like apps and websites and so on and so forth and move into a completely new paradigm of UI UX? What's that future looking like? How are you perceiving it?
I think in the near term, we will move towards an always on future. So if you think about like conversational interfaces where you can read, you can write, you can hear, you can speak, speaking is rather slow. So I don't want to speak to an LLM the whole time. There needs to be a way where I can also write. At some point, we will also get to the point where it can read my thoughts. That's going to be the quickest, especially once we're connected to silicon. But that's this whole brain computer interface route we talked about before. But when you can already just combine writing, so me doing normal work on my laptop and having an AI agent always at ready that I can speak to, like in the middle of, hey, I'm talking to an app. Hey, can you please check something? I need some information, blah, 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 and I continue here. That's definitely going to happen. And this is going to happen rather soon. So these always on interfaces are quite exciting. Again, you have to think about privacy, like who's providing this, what's actually being listened to, how do you make sure that it's not recording non-relevant things. Same as why I don't have an Echo or Alexa at home, but hopefully there will be some better versions for this. That's kind of how I see the short-term future. Long-term, I can really see UX being completely different, where you actually just have your phone, just have some smart glasses, and anything that you need will be there in an instant because you have some computer interface that's connected to you. But yeah, not a UX designer might actually be a bad choice.
No, I feel like especially with smart glasses, because it's not a new thing. It's been here for I think God knows how long. Especially from VR to AR to smart glasses, it being a part of your peripheral vision. I feel like a large part of that is also going to be just what you spoke about, right? Like you have a computer to your head, you don't need to have a phone, right? Your eyes can see what you want them to see at any point in time. Any information can get overlaid anywhere, and smart glasses almost become like a clunky middle ground between. You remember that we went from like QWERTY keypads to QWERTY keypad and touch to then iPhone came out and then it was completely like a touch based interface. I feel like something similar will probably happen with that. But really cool. And then one thing that I did want to get into is especially with the focus on privacy rights. And I almost want to look at it from a policy angle, from a regulatory angle. What kind of conversations are you seeing people have in that spectrum? Do you interact with government officials at all? Do they speak to you? What are you hearing from them? And like, how are they perceiving this new evolution, the whole new can of worms that we've opened with AI?
So I'm based out of Germany, and the situation in Europe is actually quite bad. So crypto is being regulated more. Any tax benefits are being revoked. It's being treated as different assets. So there's really very few reasons to stay in Europe if you don't have to, besides, of course, culture, family, etc. But like just from a incentive perspective, it's getting pretty bad. And even worse so for privacy. So there's lots of new regulations trying to be pushed to kind of stop any kind of privacy on chain, off chain, it doesn't matter. We did, for example, talk 2 weeks ago with the UAE or with some people from the UAE government because they are way more open to this. They definitely see the need for it, they understand it, and they are willing to kind of support people with this. Old established governments, like European ones, are very slow with this and always very careful. So they were one of the first ones to kind of have the AI Act try to limit kind of the impact of AI on regular people's lives. All good ideas, but implementation does generally always stifle innovation. That's why in Europe we don't have a strong competitor for foundational models. And I think it's a real shame. And I know lots of people are really hoping for this, but it won't come out of nowhere. Like we don't even have the infrastructure for this. Like still, internet in Germany is horrible. I don't know if there are really good GPU clusters anywhere in Europe. I know the Nordics were doing some investments, but there's so much work to be done to be able to kind of compete with US models, Chinese models. So I think India, for example, is doing a way better job at this. But there's quite a bit of picking up to do. But again, like the privacy part is quite concerning. Whenever you check news in Europe, it's just privacy inhibiting, banning any privacy tooling, because there's always this risk of illicit activities. Funny enough, last week in Amsterdam, Amin from Privacy Pools or Oxbow, he was presenting their solution, which is finally live. And he was like, yeah, this is Tornado Cash, but without terrorists. So they found a way to make it compliant. And that's kind of what most regulators just want to see. But still, they will have the problem with this because the way to be compliant is things like ZK proofs or other kind of cryptographic methods to verify, hey, I'm not part of any illicit pools. But regulators just want this very basic black and white. They want to see a green check mark, hey, no terrorists or something. So it's going to be very difficult to show it to them.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Although, like, to play devil's advocate, I do feel like with some of the regulations that have come out from their GDPR, so on and so forth, that has been helpful in some way.
I do agree. I always say like you have to protect general users. General users are not tech educated. They just want to use cool tools. But GDPR is also very stifling. Like if you want to start a startup in Europe, in Germany, you have to think from a very early moment on, like, hey, how am I storing this data? I have to provide reports on this. While any other country, you can just go out and be testing and onboarding users and getting their feedback. And then at some point, once, of course, your product becomes relevant, you have a significant user base, then you should be thinking about these things. But in Germany or Europe, it's pretty much from day one. So it's actually quite complicated. And that's why many are not incorporating here.
And then, but where does the balance come into the picture? Where we're understanding to build like really capable models and tech, you definitely need to have easier access to data, ease of doing business, so on and so forth. All of those elements being there, but it's also sort of important to protect users' privacy and make sure that terrorists are not building products here. And why I'm asking this, and I don't want to spend way too much time on this, but it is a relevant enough question, especially for people who are building globally to think about. Because if I'm sitting in India, I'm not building a model just for India, right? I want it to be
Of course.
globally accessible. And these are questions that will pop into people's heads that, okay, is there a balance that I can strike with some kind of a shift in my tech stack to ensure that it's usable across the globe? Do you feel like privacy first application, somebody using Oasis's tech stack could possibly almost like inbuilt the features that would satisfy both user privacy, government regulation, and also, innovative tech? Like, will that trifecta get solved?
So this is actually very positive privacy. So confidential compute allows users or companies to compute privately on user data. So this is very much in line with GDPR and this kind of regulation. This also would not confront any of the kind of privacy regulations currently coming out because it doesn't hide the user identity in online activities. It just does the computation in a secure and private manner. So actually confidential compute is definitely on the green for both of those criteria. It's just again going to be like, how do you enable this to compete with OpenAI, DeepSeek? It really doesn't matter. It's incredibly difficult because you don't have the infra, you don't have the data centers, the GPU clusters, and that's the bigger problem. Because if again you offer the solution with confidential compute, but your inference time is slow, you don't have good models that can compete with the latest ones, people are going to switch. Like their price of privacy is rather low. So you will get, of course, users, you will get those privacy conscious people, those that were affected at some point with any data. I mean, yesterday, I think I saw Coinbase had a data leak because there was some kind of human engineering where they manipulated some of their customer service agents or something. Don't quote me on this. So these leaks will happen. And those people, they will think more about privacy, but it is going to be a minority. So the price can't be too high. Like we really need confidential compute, but with the top models that we have with very quick inference timing.
It makes a lot of sense. And one more thing that I want to understand is, there is almost this trend now that people are saying that engineers at some point are going to become far less relevant than they are today. It's going to become very easy to build products, build agents, build tech in general, so on and so forth. How do you feel like that's going to sort of reshape the way we look at tech in general? Because, and why I'm asking you that is obviously because you're looking at it from both the technical and the non-technical angle. You're looking at it from the founder's angle, so on and so forth. Is it true or to assume that this is actually a trend that's playing out, or it's more what I like to call Silicon Valley exaggeration?
I think this is exaggeration from non-tech people. This is their dream that anyone can be tech, that the coding language is English, and it's just going to be super easy for you to build products. It is super easy for you to build MVP stage products, but production ready is a completely different animal because then you actually have to know some stuff about security, architecture, how to provide everything in a coherent manner to the users. I'm a big fan of any kind of vibe coding, but it's just like I give one prompt and it's done vibe coding. It's the sitting down, really thinking about what you want to build, having numerous sessions with an LLM, for example, defining a plan, really preferably already having the design ready somewhere else, and then going into something like Cursor and giving it proper project management tasks. Hey, I first want this backend setup, then I need the front end. And then you kind of become the supervisor and you also provide the correct API references. You tell it which functions to call. It's not going to be that trivial for non-tech people. I know more and more people will be trying to offer like no-code agent platforms, for example. I love it. It's going to be some stuff like Zapier, where you can automate lots of things. You just plug and play with different tools. This is going to happen. This is already going to be lots of value add. But the really cool stuff happens when you actually know how to develop these things and plug and play different toolings. That's not just very easy drag and drop, actually. So I think developers will just have more power. Developers will have hundreds of agents at their fingertips. So they will be the ones building these one person, $100 million companies. They will be the ones setting up their marketing team, setting up their finance team, and just focusing on kind of utilizing these agents and making the orchestration between those work, because that's the difficult part. So I don't see developers or engineers losing their power anytime soon. I do see the problem again with the junior positions because somehow they have to become senior, but most of the junior work can be done to a quite high degree by agents. So that's definitely something I am concerned about. But yeah, there's bigger worries.
No, 100%. And I know, like, you talk about the trust factor, right? That's whether it's in agents, whether it's in the tech that you're using. And there's also a like a larger problem of, yes, people are trying out something like a Lovable or some of these solutions to build products, whether that's ChatGPT, so on and so forth. And there's almost like an over reliance on this tech stack to make decisions, to think about systems, to think about operations, so on and so forth. From a business perspective, do you feel like almost the accountability factor, right? Like I made X decision because the agent said so or AI said so, right? Is it seems like a fringe thing maybe right now, but it's going to become more and more of a reality, especially when there are lesser and lesser layers of human beings validating the information that's coming from an AI. And we all
Yeah.
understand that it's not 100% perfect. It probably never will be because i- it's almost like an ironical thing also because data that it's getting is also from human beings, which are not 100% perfect. What I want to understand is from an accountability perspective, do you feel like there is a play where blockchain may be able to remold that or reshape that or think about accountability, traceability of information from a different perspective?
Yeah, that's actually a good one. So traceability, definitely. What will also help is that we will have, I guess, more foundational models that you can actually use because most of the things being built with decentralized training with companies like Prime Intellect or Jensen, this is open source. They offer this to the community, to anyone that wants to build on top of this. So already this will help with kind of the accountability because you can just use your own models. You can't actually delegate your responsibility to OpenAI because you just asked ChatGPT something. You are kind of responsible also for your own models. I don't think currently this is going to be a very viable defense in front of the judge. Like, hey, ChatGPT told me to do so, and it ruined the whole company. But I think at some point it will go towards the role of today's consultants. And I'm being a bit rude here to the McKinseys of this world, but normally CEOs, they do hire them to do the research, recommend decisions. And if something goes wrong, you can say like, hey, it was recommended by McKinsey. What can I do? They're the best of the best. This is kind of the security guarantees that CEOs get from consultants, right? And do think at some point AI or LLMs will provide this, but it's going to be very difficult to argue. Also, to kind of your point, and we didn't touch too much about the crypto stuff. Actually, I do think blockchains will also be great in giving agents a reputation because you can track most of the activity and you can assign any kind of score to some actions that are recommended by agents. And then, especially if we move towards like swarms where multiple interact with each other, you need to know which ones to use. And that's something where blockchain will come into play to provide reputation on certain agents. And only then will you interact with these agents. Also, I mean, hopefully, this is one of the narratives of crypto XAI is that agents will be utilizing blockchains for payments. And then if payment is already on chain anyways, the reputation will also be there. And then it will be a bit more trivial to kind of choose the right agents to partner within your swarm.
That makes a lot of sense. Marco, final question for you is if you could wave a wand and build your dream product, what would that be and why?
Hmm. So something with privacy by default. So preferably private GPT. Like with my magic wand, I would have the whole world have access to all of the compute. We have somehow solved fission energy and we can just have instant inference with the biggest models and we just activate confidential compute on those machines and users can talk whatever they need with those models without having second thoughts like I do, like, damn, should I really be sharing this? Even though I'm really curious to hear the answer. That would be magic.
Wonderful. Marco, this was, I would say, not just insightful, but almost enlightening to understand it from a completely different lens that probably people are not thinking that deeply about as we all discussed. So, Marco, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. This was great, man.
Awesome. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Please do follow, like, share, you know the rest, and I'll see you in the next episode. GM and bye bye.
Bye.